It is mid-February, and as we suspected, conference races are heating up all across the country. There's new faces in the Big Ten making themselves known and others that are looking to be a spoiler. We're headed to Duck Country today, and we're talking about all things Oregon right here on Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. It is Monday, February 10th, 2025. Well, there is no three-peat to celebrate in my town of Kansas City this morning, but I am sure that no one got a wink of sleep last night in Philadelphia as they celebrate the Eagles and their Super Bowl win. Hello, everyone. Missy Heidrick, national correspondent at The Next. Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Women's Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, as we sink deeper and deeper into the conference races across the landscape of women's college basketball, there's always those teams that you should never take your eye off of. Big time programs at institutions that are household names. No one can deny it when you see that green and gold O. We are talking about Oregon. What is life like for the Ducks now in the Big Ten? What do we make of this 24-25 women's basketball program? And what do they need to do to give themselves a shot at the postseason? Today, I am so excited to have with me from Sports Radio 95.3 in Eugene, Oregon, home of the Ducks on your radio dial in that part of the country. And he is in the thick of it every day. Steve Tannen. Steve, welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. How are things out in Eugene on this Monday morning?
It's great. I thought actually your intro was kind of perfect with the Super Bowl and FanDuel, because I made a contribution yesterday. Being a lifelong New York fan, grew up just outside the city, but lived in Philly for 2 years. So for spite, I bet against the Eagles, and I've been hearing it from my old Philly friends all morning long. So kudos to them, but also I'm a little bit bitter.
Yeah, I could understand that. I mean, I got to be honest, Patrick Mahomes did his very best to help that process along. And like I said, there's just everybody in this part of the country, or at least in Kansas City, they're a little down in the mouth this morning. So we're going to try to keep everybody's spirits up. It's not too bad to have back-to-back Super Bowl champions in your part of the country. So.
Oh, sure. Well, first, I'm a Giants fan, so Saquon Barkley goes to the Eagles, has an historic season to rub it in, so double. But I'm recovered now. It's great to be with you. I think the work you guys do to promote women's basketball is awesome. It's important. I'm a huge fan, and it's really an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I want to start at sort of like that 30,000 foot level. And then we'll dial it in, and we're going to talk about this women's basketball team, about Kelly Grace's program, a lot of big names and a lot of history that goes with this program as well. But let's start at that 30,000 foot in terms of the University of Oregon making the move to the Big Ten when they did. It's just, we're all still getting used to this new way of life in conference realignment. But what has this transition been like, not only for the people in the trenches, but for the fan base at Oregon in general?
Yeah, it's interesting because when they made the move, first of all, it was heartbreaking because the Pac-12 dissolved. And, I'm old enough, I literally date to when Bill Walton was in college, and it was the Pac-8 and then the Pac-10. And just when you incorporate everything, academics, athletics, the Pac-12 was notoriously good for its diversity, promoting women's sports. So there was a lot of heartbreak and a lot of anger and a lot of finger pointing to why it happened. But then I noticed prior to football season, first of all, to call it the Big Ten, it's the Big 18, it's the enormous 10. Missy, I don't think I realized the magnitude of this conference until football season started. And when I talk, I'm not just talking about 18 teams, bigger venues, bigger stadiums. I mean, the Pac-12 network, I believe, reached 12 million homes. The Big Ten Network, 50 million homes. So more eyeballs, the people I've gotten to meet. And as heartbreaking as it was to see the Pac-12 go away, to be a part of this conference, these legendary universities, some of the play-by-play people I've gotten to know, the writers, colleagues in radio, it has been an experience that I thought it would be good. It's exceeded all expectations.
When you look at the administration of Oregon, they make this move, they make the decision. We all had to watch the Pac-12 disintegrate in front of our eyes and have the last of everything in that mode. You hit July 1 and you are into integration and they become part of this Big Ten. What do you think has been maybe the piece of the puzzle at the top of the administration within the athletic department at Oregon that has made this somewhat seamless? And the success that you saw, especially with football right out of the gate, kind of carrying the torch, it just seems as though this felt like the right move at the right time for Oregon.
Yeah, Rob Mullins is the athletic director. He's been here more than a decade, and he's really been kind of the enigma behind all of it. He and his people, top quality, top coaches, and it literally went from 100 years. Well, they're the Pac-8, they're the Pac-10, they're the Pacific Coast Conference. Now they're the Pac-12 to look, 3, like you said, 3, 2, 1. Now they're in the Big Ten. And it was a seamless move. And I think, let's not kid ourselves, it helps that Oregon is a national brand. And like you said, the O is incredibly recognizable. The uniforms, all the hype that surrounds it. So, and I think that the university and the athletic department were wholeheartedly embraced because, we've seen where the Big Ten is. It's coast to coast. It's like from Rutgers, where if somebody would have told me, if you'd have told me when I was growing up that someday Rutgers and Oregon are going to be in the same football conference, I'd have done that back away quietly and run and hide because I was dealing with a lunatic. But here we are.
Right. Yeah, that is the reality of it. I have to tell you, once July hit, I was enamored with the marketing campaign of the University of Oregon and what they did with the Duck and how they just embraced this world of the Big Ten, sending him to, outside the gates of every football stadium, let me be part of the party. This has been a marketing machine at Oregon for decades. Give credit to Nike, to what Phil Knight has done. But that's a trickle-down effect throughout the entire university and the entire athletic department. Just talk about that impact. And because it seems to be, it's unlike really anything else around the country.
Yeah, well, you could actually pinpoint it because it started in 1999 when they changed uniforms. And then they became known for uniforms. And it's really amusing now because I would love to have some of the articles, some of the takes, some of the commentary back then. What is with the uniform? It's always got to be a different uniform. It's got to be an alternative. It's got to be a throwback. And now everybody does it. I understand there's a marketing genius to it because, if you make a new uniform, you sell a new uniform. So it taps right into the Nike marketing. And I think it's been embraced because when this first started in the late 90s, people my age who were late 30s, 40s were kind of curmudgeons about it. It's like, I like the traditional Duck. And somebody once said, from a marketing point of view, nobody cares what you think when you're in your 40s. This is to appeal to the teenagers, to the high schoolers, to the recruits who used to lose their mind. Kids in Florida, in Maine, around the world would be like, man, Oregon's uniforms are cool. And it opened the door. And I don't have to tell you, in the last 25 years, where Oregon has expanded, making Final Fours in basketball, both the men and women, playing for national championships, the softball team. I mean, there's a connection, believe me.
Yeah, no, and it's just recognizable. And it's something that people know that brand carries. And I know alums of the University of Oregon incredibly proud of that. And then that brings me to what our next topic of conversation is going to be. And that is going to be diving into not only the success of women's programs in general, Oregon, but we've got to talk about this women's basketball program when we come back. Not only about where Kelly Graves has been and where they're headed and what this season looks like. We will do that in just a moment.
Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by Skims for Men. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've so often been called the Kardashian of women's basketball. So getting the opportunity to try Skims, knowing about their quality from friends and family, it lives up to the hype. I tried the boxer brief. It works really well with an active lifestyle, whether I'm working out or I'm just doing something socially. Skims boxer brief really works, stays in place all day. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Go to Skims Men's section over at skims.com/lockedonnba, or check out that section in the Skims store. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, skims.com now with Skims underwear for men.
Welcome back to Locked On Women's Basketball. Missy Heidrick here. It is Monday, February 10th. Steve Tannen, the man that knows all in Eugene, Oregon, 95.3 Sports Talk Radio. All right, Steve, let's talk now specifically about women's basketball. This is year 11 for Kelly Graves at the head of this program. And we know that there has been a history of great success. I always feel like it's one of those programs with sustained success. But this move to the Big Ten, not always as simple as it could be. I think for a lot of us on the outside looking in, we always thought, well, I think some of these women's sports, life gets a little bit tougher in the Big Ten than maybe it was a few years ago in the Pac-12. Your thoughts right off the bat about this Oregon Duck team, 16-8 and 7-6 in the Big Ten right now?
Well, first of all, I think what's important to realize, to get back to Kelly Graves, is that, he took over a program. It was on life support, as weird as this sounds, Missy. The last game before he took over, the coach was Paul Westhead. And they ended that season in the WNIT at home against a rival in Washington. 733 fans were at Matthew Knight Arena. I mean, I always joke that you could have broke out your miles card, bought a round for everybody there, and not even hit your max. I mean, it was a program that had ignited a lot of passions in the 90s. And, when Bev Smith took over, she won a WNIT. She was a legend, one of the great players here. And then Paul Westhead took over, which was, I think it was as a favor to the athletic director at the time, Pat Kilkenny. But for folks not familiar with Westhead, I mean, he's a Philadelphia guy who was Magic Johnson's coach when they won the championship his rookie year. Then he was at Loyola Marymount. He wasn't really visible. You didn't see him around town a lot. There was kind of a disconnect. And like I said, you want to talk about bottoming out. I mean, the arenas in the Big Ten, place that holds 12,500, drew 733 fans. And then Kelly came in with a reputation that I wasn't totally aware of. But what he did at Gonzaga with Courtney Vandersloot, getting them to the Elite Eight. And before he got the job, before he came to town, I should say, I remember seeing Carol Lawson on an interview, and she's like, he's going to build a power in Eugene. And I got a hold of her through social media, just a quick back and forth. And she was like, a lot of people might not be familiar, but they're going to be really happy for the way he lights a fire under that program. And obviously he did.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we have seen that success. We'll talk about some of those big names in a little bit, but I want to talk about this current team and just understanding the gauntlet that is and the schedule that they have played, the challenges that they have had. They've played Baylor, who they beat. They had Georgia Tech, South Dakota State when they were in Hawaii. But then you've got to run and you got to jump right into it, whether that's playing the likes of USC and UCLA. And this has been a season of streaks. I believe it was they win 4 in a row, and then now they've lost 3 in a row. And it just seems to me that sometimes it's hard. And I think this is one of the conversations around Coach Graves over the past few years is the kind of the revolving door of a roster. How do you get those players to play together? How do you get them to click? Is there time left in this season as we think about where we are for this group to get on the same page and think about putting the postseason out into it as an opportunity?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's the gel factor. Like you said, they had been recruiting out of their minds. You think back to Sabrina and Satu Sabali and Ruthie Heber, the team that went to the Elite Eight, Final Four. And as they were leaving, Kelly landed the top class in the country, 5 stars. And they've all gone on to have great careers elsewhere. Tahina Pau just won the national championship in South Carolina. Angela Dugalich is part of this UCLA machine. You have Maddie Shear. I know she got injured. She was playing really well at Kentucky. Sid Parrish at Indiana. And everybody just started leaving. Taylor Mikesell, who had a great career at Ohio State, she left after a couple of years. And so as they slipped last year, as you know, the way the season ended, Missy, was miserable. They lost 14 straight games, and they weren't nail biters. So Kelly decided, all right, do I continue on this path, or do I kind of suck it up, reverse course? And he went and hit the portal hard. And that's, with Deja Kelly and Eliza Mevius, who came in. And, Philly Che is an original recruit. But for the most part, it's a lot of new faces, which includes their new coach, Jerice Freeman. I don't know how much, but she's in essence the defensive coordinator. So you being familiar with Coach Graves, it's always been about spacing, offense, high octane, put pressure on by daring you to outscore them. Now, all of a sudden, they're a defensive team, one of the best in the conference. And Jerice came in and not only decided that Kelly decided she's going to be in charge of the defense, but, as a player, everybody's got to buy in. And the pride they used to take about the 3-point shooting and spreading the floor and the type of offense they ran, you could see how they've embraced being a really strong, really tenacious defensive team. And with that, that's kept them in games where they've had some gaps or lacked offensively.
Well, you go back to they played UCLA over the weekend, and that's a 62-52 just rock fight, ultimately. I think you hold anybody in this country at the P4 level more than likely under 70 or, you're in under 65, you're in pretty good stead. That means that you're willing to get after it on the defensive end. They've embraced that. The question is, you've got to then be able to, I got to still make shots on the other end. The equation can be simple. You got to get stops, but then I got to make shots. I feel like the offensive side of the ball or the offensive series for them, that might be where the struggle has been as of late.
Yeah, if somebody would have told you hold UCLA to I think it was their lowest point total of the year. And if you only have to get to 64, you should win that game. So like what Coach said after the game, great effort, really proud, but they had an opportunity to win the game. I mean, UCLA is good, but they contained them a little bit. I mean, for example, if in the Super Bowl, if you'd have told the Eagles they only needed 23 points, they probably would have been doing back handsprings. If you'd have told the average duck follower they're only going to need 64 points to win this game, you'd have been like, wow, they have a real shot to knock off the Bruins. But the offense has been, you mentioned the team has been streaky. The offense has been streaky. They go through droughts where they just have trouble making a bucket. And sometimes it's not only that. If every possession you're not getting your shot off until there's under 7 seconds to go, then you're not getting your shot. You're taking what the defense is giving. There's too many forced shots. And I think that's been the source of frustration.
Yeah. Peyton Scott, who is also a grad transfer, came from Miami of Ohio, the 5'8" guard. She's actually the leading scorer so far through all games this year, has just played 21 of the total 24. Deja Kelly, she's averaging just shy of 10 points a game. I think there was a lot of people that thought that would be instant offense. Do you feel as though that, and I don't want to say that she hasn't lived up to the billing, because I don't think that that's the right way to go about it. But maybe the thought was that Deja Kelly was going to be more of an impact player this year for Oregon, to come in as that one-year transfer and see if they couldn't hit it big.
Yeah, she's got amazing leadership qualities. And as a person, she's just magnificent. She's been a real addition to the university. She's just never gotten comfortable with her shot. And what was she, 5 of 17 yesterday? And I thought between her and Peyton, and for folks who aren't aware, Peyton was a big get last year. She played 5 minutes, tore her knee up, and missed the whole year, and they had nobody to run the offense, which is why she kind of, the team hit the skids. But when she's been in there this year, and Peyton's one of those, she's just a baller. The way she walks, the way she carries herself, the way she talks about the game, it's like she was born in the gym. She was meant to do this. And so you could see when she's in there, she's got leadership quality. She's got a diversity to her game. But when she's not there, then I think maybe a little more pressure falls on Deja, whether it's a score or run the offense. And so in a dream world, they would operate in sync together. But as we've seen, now Peyton got hurt again.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's just been, like you said, there's just gaps. And when you have droughts, whether it's to be able to score and you're getting stops, but you can't answer, empty possessions or killers at this level. And in the Big Ten, there really is no night off. That's what makes it so tough. And you're looking at two teams ranked in the top, with USC and UCLA, as well as everybody else. This is a really, really good women's basketball league.
Yeah, the thing is, this is a little sarcastic, but when it comes to both our men and women's program, I've referred to their offense as climate change, because there's going to be a drought. You don't know when it's coming, and it's going to be catastrophic. Because I don't have to tell you, when you're in the 80s, in the 90s, if you go 3 or 4 minutes without a bucket, you're going to start raining threes. But when you're only in the 50s or 60s, and all of a sudden you go 4 or 5 minutes without a bucket, that's a chunk of the game that they can't afford. They have Philly. They don't have a lot of players who have a great post game. So I have to tell you, sometimes if you're not hitting from the perimeter, it's nice to be able to dump it inside and have somebody either make a layup or get fouled and go to the line. Yeah,
you got to have options. All right, when we come back, what the tradition of this Oregon program absolutely runs deep. And we're going to talk about some of those household names of Duck women's basketball with Steve when we come back. A quick message from our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get it than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss opening tip or you want in on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Plus, the app is easy, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hi, everybody. Missy Heidrick. Thank you for joining us on Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm here with Steve Tannen, man on the streets in Eugene, Oregon, 95.3 Sports Talk Radio. Steve, we've been talking about this current women's program. Kelly Graves has now season number 11. And you were talking about it just a moment ago, some of the names and the household names that we now can associate with women's basketball and the University of Oregon. I'm sure you were watching the Super Bowl last night. I was watching the Super Bowl. And if anybody didn't see the amazing new Nike ad that is all centered and fully around women's sports. You missed out. Get online, go find it. But there's a very famous duck face in that commercial. And I know it's somebody that you think very highly of in Sabrina Ionescu.
Yeah, by the way, that was the first time Nike had a Super Bowl ad, I think, in 28 years. And
Amazing.
it was where that was so cool. The eye rolls at the end, just like, God, you people don't know what you're missing out on. And by the way, I got to show you. So I'm wearing my Sabrina shirt.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
I have my wife a couple of years ago said, you know what? I just realized, because I've always, my favorite players were Derek Jeter and, you know, Reggie Jackson. She goes, you are a Sabrina geek. And I just had to cop to it because she arrived here, and I don't follow high school sports that closely. And I was told, like, this is a do everything. She's been a baller since she like rolled out of the crib. And that first year they started slowly, went to the Elite Eight, then again, then the Final Four. Then, of course, they were going to probably play South Carolina for the national championship when the pandemic canceled everything. But what Sabrina did, look, we could talk about the triple doubles. We could talk about her prowess as a player. She has a tendency to just elevate everyone she's around. I remember reading that Michael Jordan had a clause in his contract called the joy of the game. Sometimes players, they're like, we don't want you doing pickup. We don't want you. He was like, no, I have to be able to play anytime I want. That's what she did. She plays with unbridled joy, and you can see it. She's not involved with Nike marketing just because she's a good player. She's a personality. And perfect example, and her head is always in the right place. When Sabrina was a junior, Oregon was playing, they're blowing somebody out by 40 points. There's like 2 minutes to go in the game. She's sitting on the bench, but she's on the edge of her seat watching, you know, the second string, the third string. And I think it was Jazz Shelley, who went on to play at Nebraska, had an open shot, an open three. She passed on it. The ball got knocked out of bounds. There was a timeout. And I'm watching Sabrina, and as she's walking off the court, up by 40 points, had a triple-double. She goes right up to Jazz, and you can see her mouth, and she goes, shoot that. And it's just a matter of her passion for the game. And after games, she and the players would hang around and sign autographs for all the little kids. And they weren't going through the motions. There was joy, the smile on their face, taking selfies. I'm telling you, Sabrina is that rare athlete that uplifts everything and everyone she's around. And it also helps that I'm a New Yorker, and she went to the Liberty and won a title.
Yeah, that's not a bad combo. I mean, I figure like you've checked every box in that section right now at this point in time. And she was part of the Olympics, wins a gold medal there. I mean, my question to you, because we know there's a lot of famous faces that people can associate with any of their institutions, and people have that. But when I think about Oregon and I think about some of those people that are the ones that you associate with, you're going to have a really hard time, I think, in this generation of fans and over the last 15 years to find somebody that maybe has been as impactful and is recognizable now, and then continues to just carry that with her everywhere, than Sabrina Ionescu. I think she is, I mean, she could be the face right next to Puddles, the mascot.
No, and sometimes when we have down periods in sports, we talk about the Mount Rushmore of Oregon athletes. And you can get into Marcus Mariota, who won a Heisman, Joey Harrington, who really helped put the program on map, Phil Knight, Steve Prefontaine, and Sabrina is absolutely in there. And like I said, the many ways, the records she set, the fact that she came here, there was kind of a moment where they didn't know. She basically got in her car, drove from Walnut Creek, and showed up here. Some thought she might have been going to Seattle to become a Husky. So and like I said, they went from drawing 733 people to packed houses. And to this day, what gets me the most is I'll just be at a random softball game, another basketball game, and there's like a 58-year-old guy wearing a Sabrina jersey. That would have been like unfathomable many years ago. It's just she kind of makes you want to embrace what she's doing. And at the pro level, obviously, she fits in with just some of the greats. I mean, with Asia and Stewie and all them. And it always kind of warms my heart to see that she is in that group of elite players who are the face of the WNBA, which obviously now is growing exponentially.
Well, she is the face, I think, of Oregon women's basketball as we know it, and is one of the most recognizable faces in our sport and in women's sports in general, which is something that we absolutely must continue to celebrate. Steve, you are a scholar and a gentleman, my friend, to come on here with us today to talk about all things life in Eugene. For everybody who's out there listening and watching, where do they find you on a daily basis?
If you're out in Eugene, first of all, give me a call. Maybe I'll buy you a beer. 3 to 6 p.m. weekdays. We are the flagship station of the Ducks, 95.3 The Score. So online, 953thescore.com.
Fabulous. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. And we appreciate your support of all of us here at Locked On Women's Basketball and at the Next. Thank you for kind of singing our praises, because there are so many amazing colleagues that I have. Go see us all, the www.thenexthoops.com. Follow this podcast on X or Twitter, wherever you are, at Locked On WBB. And then you'll find me as well on socials at Missy Heidrick. Steve Tannen, I appreciate you, my friend. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Congrats to your Eagles. I'm sorry to all of my Chiefs fans and friends out there. But you know what? Sometimes what is it they say? One setback is chance for a comeback, and maybe they can go and get on another winning streak. We'll have to see. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy all of the basketball that you will see.
Bye, guys.